Dann begrüße ich Sie in deutscher Sprache ganz herzlich zum heutigen Webinar im Namen von Johann Tilstra, CEO von Lean Library, und Michel Tan, Sales Manager von Lean Library. Mein Name ist Gregor Bangert von Kaga Libri in der Schweiz. Wir sind Vertriebspartner von Lean Library und ja, wir freuen uns sehr, dass Sie sich die Zeit nehmen. Bei Lean Library geht es einfach gesagt darum, dass die Nutzer auf sehr einfachen Weg zu den lizenzierten Inhalten kommen und dass die Bibliothek sichtbar wird. Und ja, in dem Sinne gebe ich das Wort weiter. I will pass on to Michelle to give a short presentation or introduction.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Gregor. Hopefully, I'm not just repeating what you're saying. But basically, why we're doing this is when we were speaking to the University of Vienna, they've suggested that for any of this kind of things to happen, because what we do as Lean Libraries, we offer a browser extension. We need to make sure that we are okay with doing a consortium deal at the end in case that there are a large number of universities interested. So what I did was I called the Austrian Academic Consortium, and they've suggested that we do a webinar such as this to tell the users and on what we're all about and what we can do for your library. There was an email that was going out at the beginning to say that it sort of said that we were partnering with them. Now, unfortunately, of course, that wasn't the case. They did suggest that that we do this webinar to gauge the interest of academic libraries before we reach some sort of consortium deal in the end. They were supposed to join us today, and they did register to join us. They might still show up, so hopefully they do. And then they can also tell us on their part how it would work out. Well, right now, I guess we should start, Johan.
Yes, I'll start. So yeah, Michelle. So as you said, you are supposed to see my screen. Everybody is supposed to see my screen. So what we'll be doing with this webinar is I'll give you a short introduction of Lean Library, how we got started. I'll also talk about issues that patrons these days are having, issues that they're having using their own library, and some solutions to that. And I'd like to wrap up with any questions or any feedback afterwards. Don't hesitate to make your question known in between, or if you've got any feedback, just let us know, because it's a webinar, but I'd love it to be a little bit of a conversation as well. So please go ahead if you've got any remarks. Let me start you by telling that I used to work at Utrecht University Library, and I was working at the innovations department at the time, and Utrecht made quite a name for themselves when they were pioneering in trying to do away with the local discovery service, the local discovery tool. And as you know, of course, if you're working in the innovations department, it's all about improving services for end users. So what I used to do is have lots of conversations, lots of cups of coffee, interviews, regular chats with patrons about their use of the library. And we had actually a really nice way of starting those conversations. What I would do is I'd walk into the coffee bar with a colleague of mine, usually early in the morning, and there would be a line of people waiting to get a cup of coffee. We would walk up to them and say, well, if I would pay for your coffee, would you be willing to have a conversation with me with regards to your use of the library? And at first, this felt kind of scary, walking up to complete strangers. But that was only at first, because this turned out to be a really nice way of getting into a lot of really wonderful conversations with patrons. And from all those conversations, two of those actually stuck with me. And one was with a girl that, when I asked her how she got access to digital resources that the library had in license, she would tell me that anytime she needed something, she would hop on a bike, ride it to the library, and she would get access over there. She knew that when she was within the libraries, that's how she got access. She wouldn't go to just the university campus. She would actually go to the library building. She'd learn by herself, and that's where she got access. It was really healthy, of course, but well, she just didn't know there was also possible to get access from off campus. And another conversation that stuck with me was with a girl that used to read the New York Times. She'd need to read all those articles for her studies, and only after a few years studying did she learn that her library actually had a license for New York Times, and that you could simply open a New York Times through the library and get access that way. And of course, you might have heard similar stories about patrons having issues with using the libraries. And what I learned from all those conversations is that libraries can actually be quite difficult to use, and some of those systems require considerable effort to understand from patrons. And well, they might come to the library, but they come to the university to study their own subjects, of course, but they need to study the library as well. They need to understand how it works. And if you start digging into this kind of stuff, you come across articles like this one, Dismantling the Stumbling Blocks, from Roger Schoenfeld. There's quite a few others that are focused on why and in which ways the library is actually quite well, sometimes difficult to use. So I was thinking, what can we do? And then I had an idea. What if we build a browser extension? What if we make it really proactive? What if we make it focus on seamlessness, on convenience for the end user? And what if we make something that if you go to a specific resource, that you don't have to know if that resource is licensed by your library? And what if we also focus on security and privacy, make it really secure so that the end users actually feel confident in using it? This was all just an idea. It started out with just a hunch. And what we didn't do is we didn't dress up a whole project, got lots of funding, assigned half years of work to developers. And what we did is we hacked together a very small prototype of a first browser extension, and went back to the coffee shop to the same people and said, well, hey, here's something that we're working on. Can you just give it a try? Can you give it a try and let us know what it's all about? Have another cup of coffee, talk about how it works, why it works, if it doesn't work, why it doesn't work. Just get a lot of feedback. And from the very first start, we got quite a bit of enthusiastic reactions, and then we iterated, built further versions of that browser extension until we more or less hit feedback like this. An actual quote from one of the users: "It improves my search for articles 1,000 times. You've taken away a most hated hurdle in my life." And we got a load of feedback, a lot of quotes exactly like this. And when you get feedback like that, well, I actually started thinking, what if we can turn this into something that's not only usable for people at Utrecht University, because patrons all around the world are struggling with these same kinds of issues, because the libraries all around the world more or less have the same infrastructure, a seamless access on campus. And when you're off campus, when you're off the university network, you're more or less on your own. If you use the library, it's because you know how to use the library. So what he did is, I founded Lean Library with support from the university, and we turned that first prototype of the browser extension into a professional product. I hooked up with a professional development agency, and now we've got a professional product that is in use by libraries worldwide, helping patrons worldwide with the issues that they're having with their own libraries. So here's a few issues what I wanted to do for this webinar is go through some of those issues that patrons are having, and explain on how we try to help our end users with that. One of the issues that people might having is the question, am I on campus? Or other way put, let me start my browser there. Put it into view. I hope you can see my browser right now.
Yep.
One of the Yep, you can see it. Great. So one of the issues that a patron might have is they might go to JSTOR.org, and if they want to get access to JSTOR, what they would have to do is they have to go to the library website, find the A to Z list of databases, and that's where you find Easy Proxy link, usually Easy Proxy link or another proxy link to JSTOR. And that can be quite cumbersome, of course, in a few ways. The first question is the question, am I on campus? And that sounds like a really basic question. But if you're on campus, and in Utrecht we had the situation that if you were on campus, but you were using the guest Wi-Fi, you were being seen as off campus. And then on the other hand, if you're off campus, but you're using a VPN connection, from a technical perspective, you're being seen as on campus. So the question here of, am I on or off campus is actually quite difficult. But you need to know to get access, because on campus, if you're on the right IP range, on the right network, access is seamless. When you're off campus, who knows how to get access to JSTOR. So this is what we do with our browser extension. If I were to open JSTOR and I'm off campus, this is what happens. I press enter right now. Our browser extension recognizes JSTOR as a domain that can be opened through my library. And in this case, I'm using my account with the Dutch National Library, the Koninklijke Bibliotheek. They've got a license for JSTOR, and I've got an account with that library. Our browser extension automatically redirects JSTOR through the proxy. Hopefully you can see that the URL has changed into an URL with the proxy in the first part of that. And now my credentials have been filled out by LastPass, the password manager. It's just one click for me to get access to JSTOR through the proxy of my library, just one click. And when we got into all the cups of coffee, all those interviews with end users, we asked them, so why your positive feedback on these features? And what they usually said is a few different things. One of the things is they say, yeah, it helps me with opening those databases. It's simply convenience. Saves me time. I don't have to go through the library website anymore. The other thing they told me is they don't have to know in advance anymore if a specific domain can be opened through the proxy. So for instance, JSTOR is quite well known. Most people will know that they can open JSTOR through the proxy because most academic libraries have a license for JSTOR. What if you click a link to an article on Taylor and Francis or on Wiley? You've never heard about Wiley. You don't know that it's well, quite a famous publisher, but you don't recognize the domain. People just don't go to the library website for every single domain to see if that domain can be opened through the library's proxy. At a certain point in time, they'll just miss out on valid access. And with our browser extension, getting access becomes a seamless process. And that's really helpful for end users, of course. What we heard with our many conversations from librarians across the world is that they really appreciate the visibility of the library as well. A lot of libraries recognize the fact that they are, well, quite well known and visible when on campus, of course. People know that where the library is and they know what they can use the library for. But when they're off campus, the library isn't that visible anymore. So, well, with our browser extension, the library becomes visible in the user's workflow. There's a logo of the library, and also in the footer over there, a link back to the library website. So for patrons, it becomes really easy to get in touch with the library. And right now, I had to actually log in once. I had to authenticate myself with the proxy server of my library. I need to prove, of course, that I'm affiliated with, in this case, the Koninklijke Bibliotheek. But if I try to open another database right now, for instance, Acta Sanctorum, because I've got a proxy session already, because I've just authenticated, access actually is seamless. And what we do afterwards is we do inform the end user, give them a short message that this database actually, this resource actually has been opened through their library's proxy, and that they now have access to everything that's licensed over here. Another issue that we solve with this first module, we call this first module library access. and I'll show you 2 other modules that we've got in a minute. But another issue that we solve with library access is when using Google Scholar, when people search through Google Scholar to make sure that Google Scholar actually shows those library links, and I guess you know what I'm talking about, you need to make sure that Google Scholar knows your affiliation. And for that, as a patron, you need to configure Google Scholar yourselves. With our browser extension, that's no longer needed. If I'm using Google Scholar, and I'm looking for something like, always looking for dinosaurs. These links that you can see over here, and I'm using another browser, and I'm using Novozymes library right now because we're working with them as well. What our browser extension can do is it can automatically notify Google Scholar about the affiliation from the patron. And these find at Novozymes links, right now they appear because our browser extension has automatically configured Google Scholar for the patron. And this is, again, maybe not the biggest issues of all, but it's a real convenience thing where the end user doesn't have to configure Google Scholar themselves anymore. And also for librarians where you don't have to keep stressing your patrons, please do configure Google Scholar, because otherwise Google Scholar won't show those library links. And this way, what you also don't have to do is you don't have to set up a configured easy proxy link to Google Scholar. You can just tell patrons install the browser extension, and it will just automatically configure Google Scholar by itself. And we do more or less the same thing for PubMed as well, where we can automatically notify PubMed when people use PubMed, notify PubMed about the holdings from their library. These are a few features few issues that we solve with our first module, library access. There's another issue that might be well known to you where, for instance, a patron might know that he or she can use maybe a bookmarklet, open databases through the library's proxy. But what if you hit on a database that you need other methods to get access for? What if you use a database that you actually need a username and password? For instance, this database. If I go there right now, what happens is, it's always a bit slow when loading. Here it is, a message from my library, from my second affiliation that I've configured in the browser extension right now. We can configure two institutes in our browser extension. Université de Rennes, we're working with them as well. And here a message pops up, again, automatically informing me about the fact, in French this time, about the fact that I actually need a username and password for this database. And that information in itself could have been found on the library website, but I'm not on the library website. I'm on this database, and nowhere does the publisher of Global Retail News indicate to me that my library does have a license for Global Retail News and that I need to use a username and password. And here's a link conveniently shown to me right now to an intranet page from Université de Rennes. And if I click it, I'll be taken to the internet page. I need to authenticate myself again, of course. It's a secure page, but there I'll find the username and password to use this database. Another matter of convenience, where if you just land on this database and you don't know how to get access, you don't know if your library has a license for it, is a message from your library, very helpful, telling you that there actually is a license. This is how it works like when people install the extension. They're asked first to enter their affiliation, their first one, and here you can see that I've actually selected the second one. So we can work with two different affiliations. We see that quite often people who are studying or working at the university also have accounts with maybe a national library. That's the case here in the Netherlands, and in France, that's also quite often the case. And that's why we've enabled, that's why we built the possibility to select two different affiliations. There are more issues, of course, with using libraries. And one of the issues that I want to switch back to Opera, one of the issues that I would like to focus on is, for instance, the fact that if you land on a specific article, and in this case, I've opened this article on Science Direct, the issue is that within libraries, within academic libraries, specific articles can be available on separate platforms, separate domains. And that's quite hard to understand. For instance, in this case, this article on Science Direct is available through Novozymes, just somewhere else. It's available on an aggregator platform, and I think for them it's available on EBSCOhost. And that's a really complex situation to understand. It took me quite a while to figure it all out. That it can actually be the case that one article can be available on different locations, and it might not be in license on platform number A, whereas it is available on platform B. How are you supposed to know? How are you to figure it out? Especially if the publisher says, well, if you want to get access, just simply purchase this PDF. Pay some money, you get access. And we've actually heard back from quite a few librarians who, from time to time, run into researchers who actually pay for articles because they need access, and they don't know how to figure out if a specific article is also available through their own library, just on another platform. That's an issue that we solve with our third module, Library Alternatives. And with the Library Alternatives, we hook into the knowledge base. And the knowledge base, of course, contains the information on which articles are available where. So what we do is, as you can see right here, we can see that what article I'm looking at. We can also see that this article is available through Novozymes, just somewhere else. And we automatically seamlessly present a link to where there is a full, an appropriate copy of this article through Novozymes to be obtained. Another issue that we solve with this third module is the question, is there maybe an open access version of this article available? I'd like to read it. Maybe my library doesn't have a license for a specific article. Maybe it's available in open access. And that's the case, for instance, for this article over here. Of course, you can see the numbers. Subscribe just $200, or just pay some rent, $5, or buy it for 20, or, well, even better, just get the open access version. No money involved. This article is not licensed by Novozymes, but then again, just one click and then you actually get this article on your screen. But what if an article is not in license through your library, but there's also no open access version to be found? What are you supposed to do? Well, you could go to all sorts of illegal sources, of course, but that's not something that you'd like to push your users to do, of course. So what we can do is we can inform the end user that they can request a copy through their library. And for this article, this is not licensed by Novozymes. There's also no open access version that can easily be found. It's not available. So what we do with our browser extension is we inform the end user that they can request a copy of this article through their own library. And it's simply a matter of filling out your credentials. If you press this link, in this case, you're taken to a Novozymes order form. We've filled out the metadata of the article, so the title, and the journal title, and the publisher, and all that information has already been filled in. So now it's simply a matter of entering my personal information and requesting a copy of that article through my library. And we work with document delivery systems, also with interlibrary loan systems. So more or less, the bottom line of our browser extension is that there's quite a few issues that patrons might encounter with trying to get access to materials, trying to use the licenses that the library has for resources, trying to get appropriate copies onto their screen, trying to get in touch with the library, getting onto the contact page. All these issues we try to solve with our browser extension. And at the same time, when we're focused on making using the library easier for patrons, we're also focused on making the library itself more visible in the end user's workflow, making it really clear what it is that a library is doing for the patrons of the library. I think right now it's also a good idea to mention that we are quite strong on privacy and security. So to make our browser extension work, we don't need any personally identifiable information from patrons. The only thing a patron needs to do when installing our browser extension is simply select his or her affiliation, and that's all we need. And we even go one step further. All information that we do gather, because we do gather some statistics, all that information, the ownership of that information stays with the library. To make this all work, there is a backend, of course. And this is what it looks like. This is what a librarian would access to configure our browser extension. Here you can see a list of domains, and these are all these proxy domains that will automatically be opened when using our browser extension. These are all domains that are in the proxy server, in the configuration of the proxy server of the Dutch National Library. What we usually do is, what you could do is, you could enter all these domains manually into our backend. But what we usually do is we set up a connection with the library where we retrieve that list every now and then to keep this system synchronized with the proxy server of the library. So you don't have to do that manually. That's a one-time setup process. And after that, the synchronization process is being done automatically. Here you can see the list of messages that you can configure in the case, for instance, for global retail news, a configurable message from the library helping a patron out with getting access to resources that can't be opened through the proxy or that require some other steps. And here you can see a small overview. Numbers are not that high because this is more or less a demo account that we're using. But here you can see an overview of the information that we provide to librarians on how the browser extension is being used. You can see various browsers that are being used, Chrome, Firefox, and Safari right now. Still working on support for Microsoft Edge and Opera, but you could see that I was using Opera. It's still a beta version. You can see how many times people have been redirected, how many times Google Scholar has been automatically notified. You can see how many people have installed this demo version. And all this information is provided by us to librarians to have a good idea, a good sense of the uptake, the adoption of this browser extension among their end users. Just go into the supported browsers for a bit. We've got Chrome, Firefox, Safari. Again, we're working on Microsoft Edge and Opera, coming out quite soon as well. We also have an Internet Explorer 11 version available. That's not a version that we'd like to hand out to end users, but it's available to libraries who would like to go with a proxy everywhere situation where there's no seamless access on campus anymore, and all access to resources needs to go through the proxy. And there's a few reasons why you might want to do this. The first is because of statistics. With a seamless on-campus access, all those people bypass the proxy, so they're not visible in the proxy logs. So you're completely reliant on the reliability of the counter files from publishers. And another reason to go with proxy everywhere is to be able to use the security mechanisms of a proxy server, to be able to shut off any misbehaving users before a publisher shuts off a whole institute from access to a specific journal or a specific database. We're also working on support for mobile devices. With mobile devices is a bit tricky because the technology of a browser extension is not widely supported on mobile devices. Currently, only Firefox supports browser extensions and only on Android devices. But we are working on a mobile app to offer some of these services and make it easy to get access to resources on mobile devices. On the other hand, what we're hearing back from librarians is that going through databases, searching for literature, is something that's predominantly being done on laptops and PCs. And there we support, well, all modern browsers and also Internet Explorer 11, because I wouldn't want to call that a modern browser. that's about what I wanted to go into for this webinar right now. The issues that patrons are having. I've shown you some of the issues that they are having and our solutions for it. Again, we've got various modules. The first one was library access, where we try to help with traversing a proxy server. The second one is called library assist, where you can configure those messages to pop up on specific places to help out end users in other situations. For instance, if a database requires some other steps. And the third one is the module where we connect with the knowledge base to do even more of those complex situations, help with people getting across to an appropriate copy of an article. And that third module is called library alternatives. This is what I wanted to show you about the issues that we see patrons having and our solutions for that. Michelle, did I miss anything, or did you get any questions so far?
No questions yet. I do want to ask if anybody has a question. I think this is the best time to type in your question now, or if you can just say it or speak it. By all means, do let us know if you have any questions on what Johan has been talking about.
Or any feedback, of course, it's also welcome.
So I'm just going to wait here until someone types a question.
I'm not sure if there are any questions. If it's all been very clear, then that's fine as well, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess I'll wait another 30 seconds or so for someone to type up a question. Maybe they are in the process of doing that. I can't see it from my end. But please let us know in the box if you have a question, or just raise your hand. There's a box at the 5th box under the attendee list that you can raise your hand if there's a question, and I will wait.
Okay. Michelle, any other things that you think I should go into right now?
No, I think you covered everything, Johan. I think you did mention all of the issues that libraries are currently facing and our solution for those issues. For me, it was quite clear.
Excellent. Gregor, any things that you would like me to go into any deeper right now?
No, I think it was really complete. Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, so I don't see a question coming in. Maybe they will. Of course, we will follow up with. Oh.
All right.
Links anymore, but provide remote access via shibboleth. Is the extension available for that too?
Oh yeah, that's an excellent question. Of course, yeah. What we've seen is that quite a few libraries are either offering various methods of getting access. So, for instance, on-campus access through IP-based authentication, and then also a VPN connection maybe, and on top of that, an easy proxy server. But of course, there are also libraries that provide access via shibboleth. We are working on making shibboleth easier to use, because of course there's still that last step for a patron where if you go to a specific resource, that you still need to know if that resource can be opened through your library. And if you're confident that a specific resource can be opened through your library, then you'll actually take that step of trying to try to authenticate through shibboleth. And we are working on making that last step easier, making it real seamless, that if you land on a resource that can be opened through shibboleth or via shibboleth through your library, that you're automatically being presented with that information, that you're automatically being taken to the right authentication screen. Right now, we could also do that with that second module, Library Assist. We could configure a message informing the end user, hey, we've got a license for this resource. Locate the shibboleth login button on this resource to get access. We're trying to make that a little bit more seamless as well. That's still in the works though. I hope that's
Thank
a bit.
you.
Yep. I hope that's a bit of a clear answer to that.
Thank you, Suzanne, for that answer. Please let us know if it's not so clear so that we can try to explain it again. If it is, then let us know as well.
Yeah, she said, okay, thank you. Perfectly clear. Thanks. Oh, great. I managed to explain how that is. That's yeah, nice. Thanks so much.
Sylvia, Michael, do you guys have any questions on your end? Or feedback? Can tell us we do great. That's good too.
No questions.
Okay.
So that's good as well. Great.
All right, that's all good. I think we've covered everything that we needed to cover. What we'll do next is, of course, we will be sending you the recording of this webinar so that if you need to discuss it with your colleagues or you want to show what, or if you need to provide a report on what you've learned today, you will be able to find it through the recording of the webinar itself. I will be doing all of that in the following week on Monday. That's when you guys will receive all of the recordings for this webinar. Gregor, would you like to probably?
Ja, also auch nochmal in deutscher Sprache ganz herzlichen Dank für Ihr Interesse. Wie Michelle schon gesagt hat, erhalten Sie nächste Woche die Informationen und die Aufnahme. Und wir sind natürlich immer für Sie da bei Fragen. Und ja, und würden uns freuen, wenn wir weiterhin mit Ihnen diskutieren dürfen. Yeah, that was from my side, Michelle. It's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gregor. So yes, I will definitely. Oh, I can't seem to speak, but definitely, if you do have any questions after you've taken a look at the recording again, or if your colleagues have any questions after this, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us or with Gregor. By all means, put forth your questions. We would love to hear what you think about this in the end, and your feedback is important because we do need to go back to the Austrian Academic Consortium, and we do need to figure out if this is going to be a consortium work or if it's going to be just individual libraries. We really appreciate your time. Hopefully, we will work with all of you soon.
Thanks as well from my side for any questions and for taking the time to attend this webinar. Thank you.